Hey, and we are live in one, two. Good night to you all, and welcome to Alternate Views. Very happy to be here yet again. Thank you all for tuning in this wonderful, lovely Thursday afternoon on March the 7th. It's approximately 7:07. We apologize for the late start. We started 7 minutes late. Seven is a very good number of completions. So I hope that we have a very complete show this afternoon. So I want to welcome you all and thank you all for tuning in once another Thursday. We'll be having Dr. Lynette Holder on the program, and she's our first female guest. So I am very proud to be having a female guest on the panel right on the celebration of International Women's Day. So we marked a milestone on the program and having our first female guest on Alternate Views. Um, Welcome to you all. I saw we had some persons sending in very early, so we always give thanks for you individuals. So let me start up by saying good night to you all. Square Four, thank you very much. Um, Avid supporter, we express gratitude for you signing on every Thursday. ADG, welcome to the show. Marcia, good night to you. Me Matt, 2017, welcome and see you already early with your question. Gail Biz, thank you for tuning in. You're at work, but nevertheless, thank you very much for watching. Heath, welcome to you, Heath. Bihoy, good evening. Sir Alfred Benjamin, locked on all the way from Brooklyn, New York. Emerson Bob, hailing all the way from the United Kingdom. Welcome to Alternate Views. So far, we're at 42 persons. Asking you to obviously like and share the screen. Last week we had Mr. Carlos Ford, and that was a record show for us. I just want to check out how many engagements we've had on the last show. We've had 3,900 views on Alternative Views last week with Mr. Carlos Ford. So thank you very much. The show is growing substantially, and I want to thank you all the viewers for making it what it is. So tonight, it gets better every night. So you want to make it even better than last night. So go on and share. Put it in your group chats. Send it to mommy, daddy, daughter. Um, let's have a very good evening. We're having Mr. Net Holder again. And the topic is minding your business. And that is a very good topic to have in Barbados. We'll be minding some business this evening, and we want you all to tune in as it promises to be a very informative uh, session. We see Miss Holder here very early, so we're going to let her in a minute or two. But I just want to welcome you guys in. Come on in. The numbers are building quite uh, quickly. So let us get in and have a very good discussion on minding your business. As many of you might have seen, Miss Holder out there in the media and in other spaces working on small business mainly. I personally know her as the former head of the Small Business Association. But when she comes in, she'll give her a grand introduction on her own profile. We know we alternate views are only facilitators. We ask the questions, we ask probing questions from public information that is already out there. We cross reference already existing literature in a bid to help develop national conversations on different niche areas. Small business is a very, let's just say business in itself is a very broad topic. Uh, Many persons believe that it's big business who props up the Barbados economy, but that is not completely true. And I know that Ms. Holder will put the facts on the table as it relates to how important small businesses to the Barbados economy and how it actually the base and the structure of how we live. So we are at 61 persons. Continue to share, continue to like. Uh, we want to get those numbers up. Let's have a very good show and a very good discussion with Miss Holder. It is approximately 12 minutes past 7, and I will delay you no longer, and I will welcome her into this afternoon's show. So, welcome to you, Dr. Lynette Holder. Your segment this afternoon is Minding Your Business, and welcome to Alternate Views, our first female guest. And I hope that is the start of something very well. Welcome.
I think it is, Kima, actually. Good evening.
Yes, yes. Good evening to
Good
you.
evening to you and to your viewers. You rightly said at the very beginning that it is on the heels of International Women's Day. I'm not so sure if you planned this, Kima. Was this a strategic decision
But
on the heels of this celebration to have a female, your first female on the show?
it was more of a subconscious one. I really didn't recognize it was international in museum, but it fit very well nevertheless.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, it is a pleasure to be here and to share a few thoughts with you and to engage with your viewers on a subject matter that I love, as you know, minding your business. So I want to use my experience, my training to discuss this topic this evening, and hopefully that we can learn from each other over the next couple of hours as we really look at business in Barbados. I might add the region because I have to throw in that, as you know, I do have that interest in integration. I consider myself to be a regionalist at heart, and therefore I do believe that a lot of what will be shared can be applicable to our regional brothers and sisters and the territories within the Caribbean. So it is a pleasure of mine to be here and to participate in this conversation on minding your business this evening.
Yes, well, thank you very much. We jump right ahead. Let's you could tell us a bit about yourself, who's Dr. Lynette Holder, what interests do you have in the area of business, so that we know who we're speaking to on the
Okay.
platform.
Let me use maybe one simple statement that I think can capture my training and interests. I'm a business executive, as you know, as you rightly introduced earlier, not former uh, uh, employee or member of the association, not former at all, Kimar, but current CEO of the Small Business Association of Barbados, a position I've had now for some time. So I continue to lead that non-governmental organization. I'm also a credit union leader, so not sure how many of you have an appreciation for that interest as well. And I've served as an elected member of the executive of the second largest credit union here in Barbados, cumulatively for for about 20 years. As I said, I'm a regional integrationist at heart. One of my master's actually is in regional integration at the University on the Hill, Cayfield campus. Um, After doing an MBA some time ago, I felt I wanted to then, specialize in an area of interest, and I pursued then a Master of Science in Integration Studies. So you'll see me commenting every now and again on the integration project within the Caribbean. I'm a governance professional, a graduate of the Chartered Governance Institute of Canada, and an accredited director with that institution as well. So that is another area of interest. And then, fifthly, I am a student of scripture. And I'm deliberate in saying student because I believe, as we are told, to search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life. So I am a lifelong student. I don't think that I'll ever graduate out of being a student of scripture because of the very fact that, revelation is progressive and therefore you're constantly learning and constantly growing in your knowledge of God, and how God interfaces with his creation. So those, if you will, are maybe my 5 areas of interest and or training. But this evening we're talking about business. I hope that there'll be another time that maybe we can share on some of the other areas as well. But we're focused on business this evening, and again, it's an opportune time, because as we look around at the national level, there's a lot of conversation going on right now about the estimates, for example, of government income and expenditure. A lot happening, and I hope that as we go on, we'll get an opportunity to comment on some of the conversation around business in Barbados. And overall, I think this is a good topic for us to share, and it's coming on the heels, Kimar, of the number of economists that you've had on the show since you would have restarted this Alternate Views program. And I did share with you some time ago, but I see I see several economists, which is good. Carlos Fort was on last week. My good friend some weeks ago, Professor Justin Robinson, and this is all good. I like to hear the economists, like to hear their views and the like. But I say to folks all the time that the economists wouldn't have anything to talk about if there was no business activity, because it is the ability to trade, the ability for business to happen in the country, that is going to give the economists some fodder and some data to analyze projections and so on to be made. So within the context, therefore, of economic development, business is at the foundation. And so I'll begin, if you would allow me, this afternoon with that premise that business is germane, business is critical to economic development. We all know that we need business to create jobs, stimulate economic activity. Business drives innovation and competition, helps to develop new markets, opportunity for even a country to determine what its competitive advantage will be as it looks to do business even across borders. Business helps with the production of goods and services, and provide products for consumers to purchase, and also for wealth creation. I mean, I've not even touched on the social side of business and the social implications within the country. But at the end of the day, business, in my view, is at the foundation of a progressive and a buoyant economy. Business helps with economic growth and development. So I'm glad that you're turning your attention to this, and hopefully, as your audience gets involved, that they too will help us to distill this very important topic. Now, the question is, I'm sure, as your viewers and so on look on, they're wondering, well, is Barbados pro-business? I am not talking about big business versus small business. We'll get to share a little bit more about that. But is Barbados as a country pro-business? Let me use a quote from Professor Robinson himself, shared at a forum organized by one of the organizations that I referenced earlier that I'm associated with. He said, and I quote, "Caribbean states are good for some business persons, but not necessarily good for business." Should I repeat that? Here's a quote from Professor Robinson. "The Caribbean states are good for some business persons, but not necessarily good for business." The truth is, I've been studying this, analyzing this, a personal view, I believe, of one of our noted Caribbean economists. And it sent me to look at what are some of the theoretical frameworks out there that we can possibly use to test this hypothesis, if you want to call it that, to test this theory. Is it good for business? Is it good for business? Is Barbados good for business? And at that time, we were actually looking at the region. So, his comment was couched within the context of the Caribbean. And I wondered then, if I apply a theoretical framework to our own country, Barbados, can we say that Barbados is good for business? And what do I mean by that? Is it easy to enter the market? Is it easy to access resources, to grow, to bring your ideas from being ideas to operationalization? How easy is it to access the resources needed to take that idea into, grow that idea, put that idea into practical operation, etc. So let's look at a very popular theoretical framework that maybe will help us to answer this question. Is Barbados for business? Do we have an environment that allows for business to thrive? The irony, Kimar, is that Barbados is now, 2 years a republic? Heading into a third?
Yeah, from 2021 December.
If there was ever a time, and maybe at the end of the show, that may be our conclusion. If there was ever a time for us to determine now our development model as a country, as a small island developing state, it is now, because we are a young republic. And the fact is, we now need to determine, what do we want Barbados to look like 50 years from now, 100 years from now. We all know the Asian models where, when they're planning, they're not planning in 4 or 5 year cycles, as we do sometimes based on our electoral process, but they're planning 50 years down the road, 100 years, etc. So here we are at the beginning of this republic, and here is our opportunity now to determine what kind of country do we want to see in the future. What kind of country do we want to bequeath to our children and to our grandchildren? And I want to suggest, my view is, we want to become an entrepreneurial country. We want to become an entrepreneurial economy. We want to encourage and develop an entrepreneurial economy. And how can we do that? Let's look at the theoretical framework, as I shared before. There are several out there, but I have found this one to be, very instructive. It's from the Babson College. I found this one to be, relevant and easily applicable to countries irrespective of their origins and so on. So if we can, for the next few moments, Kimar, I look at the 6 aspects, the 6 elements of this framework, and maybe use each one as a kind of a measuring stick, if you will, on what obtains in Barbados to help us answer the question: are we pro-business? And if not, then can we use this theoretical framework to determine what we need to do to become more business oriented as a country? Can we do that? Yeah. Okay. So as I said, Babson College, they've done a lot of work, a lot of research, and there are others, because there's some who might be watching this now, or even in the shows to come, who can identify others. But so there are other theoretical frameworks out there. a lot that the academics, use in their teaching, in their discussions, in their conversations, and so on. But as I said, I have found personally this to be very effective. And though it has 6 elements, 6 aspects, the question is, do we need to um, ensure that we are meeting all 6 of them? Do we need to put the systems in place for all of them, or a majority can do, and so on? Yes, ideally, we would want for all 6 of these aspects to be operational within the country, but the truth be told, we can have a majority. So let's start off with policy. First one, the policy framework. And you've heard me, Kimar, in the past, and some of my public comments speak a lot about the legislative environment and the regulatory environment that exists within the country. And because I believe we are not a capitalist society, first of all, let's make some assumptions. Let's state some foundational truths. We are not a capitalist society. Our countries in the region, we are in terms of an ideological framework, we are democratic socialist. So we're not a capitalist society. Therefore, you'll hear me say many times that our government plays an interventionist role in the market. It has to, because of that ideological position that we hold. And so the question is, what is the policy framework that exists, that obtains for business in Barbados? Is it an enabling one or not? I'll raise my hand very quickly to say that I was a fan of the former Prime Minister Owen Arthur. Raise my hand. Let me declare that early, because I believe he was one of our leaders in modern time that, to me, really demonstrated an understanding of that interventionist role that government needs to play in the marketplace, especially as it relates to business. And so you remember that it was around circa 1999, further amendment in 2006 or thereabout, where we had a Small Business Development Act. Barbados was one of the first countries within CARICOM to actually put this legislative framework in place. And the intention was that, this will help to stimulate small business activity.
Wait, when you say small business, could you give us some imagery, idea what you mean by small business? Um, what classifies a small business? Um, you know, but who or what or where is a small business?
Okay. So by way of definition, then, the same act that I just referred to defines a small business as any business, well, majority owned, obviously, locally. But any 2 of the 3 criteria I share with you now are used to define a small business based on the act. All right. 25 or less employees, paid up capital of $1 million, annual revenue of up to $2 million. So when we talk about a definition pursuant to the act, this is what is used. Okay. And so within that piece of legislation included at the time something called an approved small business, because it was contemplated by the architects of the legislation that you would have a special carve out for for those who wanted now to have access to certain preferences. At that time, you paid a lower corporation tax. I believe it was about 15%. You got special concessions on items that you import, etc., etc. So the framework was there to try to encourage persons to seek that approved small business status. But more importantly, there was, for the first time, a piece of legislation that addressed the small business sector, that gave a definition and that, spoke to the overall administration of the sector. So I think that he started it. And in addition to that, there were, a number of interventions made, which I'm going to come to, trying not to jump too much because we have a lot to discuss this evening, I'm sure. But then there were a number of other interventions that he made along the way. And this is former Prime Minister Arthur I'm talking about, that demonstrated, in my view, an understanding of this sector, and that is specifically small business, and what we maybe need to do to try to incentivize more and more persons to get involved in small business. And if you remember too, we've had the usual boom and bust that occur in the economy. And I think when that administration came to power, you were coming off of one of those crises that would have affected several of our economies across the world, and therefore persons were thinking about small
COVID.
business activity and so on. Now, we're talking about or now, so we're talking about back in
Oh, sorry.
1994. Yes, 1994 thereabout. And remember, there was the structural adjustment period at the time. There were, a number of former civil servants who were thinking about starting their own business, thinking about entrepreneurship. Because if you remember, there was a downsizing, if you will, of the public sector, and so there was a need to have a policy framework that would encourage persons to consider business activity. So this is my first point. What is the policy framework that exists? Now, fast forward, I think that the Democratic Labour Party now um, sought to build on that, because remember that, I mean, I've been in this thing now for a little while. I go back close to 3 decades, so I've been around and I've seen several administrations and what they would have done. So in the second term, I think that was what, after the 2013 general election, and that term there, the administration sought to build on that. Look at some of the things that they did. We saw for the first time a focus on a small business ministry. And this again, there were a number of persons advocating and agencies advocating along the way. So we had a focus on small business. Never before was there a ministry and a focus at the ministerial level for small business. So we had a ministry, sorry, of small business and rural development. And from that time, we saw, until more recently, a focus on small business at the ministerial level. There was no policy, there was no central policy for the sector. So even though UNAFA would have commenced with the legislative framework, there was no policy, there was no central policy. But we saw that then with the Stewart administration back in 2016, the work was done to have a broad policy framework now for the sector that will ensure that we can operationalize, if you will, the legislation that was developed, that was put in place back then. So here was a policy, a central policy, for the first time
Hold
being
That's
introduced
that's
for
the
the sector.
that's for me to get an understanding. There was the operational aspects added to legislative aspects brought on in more recent years. If you fast forward some years, there was the trust loan program that was rolled out. The $5,000 that I would consider that to be an operational aid, but in its sense, not $5,000. Um, I would just say that if ONAFA had the, or if he was alive and he was dealing with it, I suspect there would have been a more pragmatic approach, um, as compared to the trust loan program. So I just want to understand if the trust loan program is indeed what you could be speaking to in terms of an operational element.
Not
And
quite, not quite. Because if you go back to the Babson College model I shared earlier, the first point I'm talking about is the policy framework. The second one is financing. I'm going to get a financing now. So I was sharing that I was trying not to rush the gun with the interventions by former Prime Minister Arthur, um, because as I said, the second point is financing, and he had some revolutionary ideas back then too about financing. But let me wrap up the point on policy first. So we have, first of all, based on this model, the question around what your policy framework looks like for a sector, or for the economy rather. And I'm sharing that we had introduced legislation back then. We had introduced, after Arthur, a policy framework by the Stewart administration, for the sector. So these are some of the innovative ideas that were put in place to create that regulatory regime for the sector. And this is answering that first point about policy. Okay. Now, the truth be told, there have been some additional regulations of late that, in my view, are not pro-business. But we'll come back to that after I've at least introduced the six concepts, because I want to introduce the six aspects of the framework first. That's fine, Kimar? So the first one is
go
that
ahead,
policy
yes.
framework, or that regulatory framework. The second one is financing. So you fast forward to talk about the trust fund, which is answering the financing aspect of this model. But let's go back and see what happened back then in the 1990s. If you remember, in the mid, well, to late 1990s, remember the agencies that were introduced back then. You had the fund access, you had the enterprise growth fund. These came about following the closure of the Barbados Development Bank. So here are some um, institutions being introduced to address the financing issue, right? Because you must have access to finance as a part of this framework that determines if you have an entrepreneurial ecosystem, if you have an environment that is conducive for entrepreneurial development. What is the access to financing? What is the availability of financing for the sector? Those who want to take that business idea and operationalize it now, can you easily and readily access financing? And why I made the point earlier about my admiration, if you will, for the Arthur administration, because he was the first who tried to bring to the market something called venture capital financing, which was another aspect of the mix. Right. So these were introduced back then as a
What,
part of
what
the
is venture
solution.
capital? What is venture capital?
Right. So venture capital, unlike debt financing, venture capital is a form of equity, is a form of ownership, if you will. So it is the type of financing that allows someone to make that capital available to a firm in exchange for a percentage share of that business. And in the late 1990s or thereabout, there were two venture capital windows, projects, if I can call them that, because they were projects to some extent. They were new to the marketplace. You had, myriad success. I'm sure that the academics and students who will be researching um, business, they'll do some research on this. But I'm making the point that, in my view, that is, Lynette Holder's humble opinion, Arthur was visionary in recognizing that you need to bring this to the market. Now, was the market ready for it? It's a different question, and the research will answer that. But the point is, he brought it to the marketplace as an alternative to the traditional debt financing or loan financing, as we know. So these were some of the solutions introduced back then, uh, as an effort, I believe, to try to help us to carve out this entrepreneurial environment, this entrepreneurial ecosystem. But it fits into the Babson College model that I'm talking about tonight, that speaks to financing as another pillar, as another tier, because you cannot speak to having a country that is pro-business, a country that has a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem, and you don't have access to financing. Okay, you must have um, a myriad of finance solutions and finance products being made available, and easily available too, easily accessible to those who are desirous of entering the entrepreneurial environment. Now, the third area is culture. I hear a lot of commentary. You listen to the calling programs, you read the comments on social media, wherever you go. The comments come sometimes in silos. Okay, people tend to speak to one or two of these six areas that I'm discussing this evening, and rightly so, because they're speaking from their experiences. But culture is a critical area. Matter of fact, one can argue that maybe culture underpins everything that I'm going to be talking about this afternoon. Because if you don't have a culture of of business and entrepreneurship and so on, one can easily argue that you will have a challenge of really developing a strong ecosystem. So
Could
the
I,
question would be, what influences an entrepreneurial culture?
what could I ask? So, I want to ask you some. I'll give you an observation, not necessarily a question, but I like that point you just made about what underpins the culture of entrepreneurship. My observation is during COVID, when we had uh, mass people being at home, not going to work, um, the unemployment lines were long, the severance lines were long, and I don't necessarily enjoy the race conversation, but I have to bring it up now. But most of the people in the line were Black Barbadians. Um, we have other Barbadians living here. We have Indian Barbadians, we have white Barbadians, Syrian Barbadians. Um, but that made me sit up and look and say, well, I'm not seeing many whites here, not seeing many Indians here. When I look at the cultures of the whites, there's a heavy underpinning of entrepreneurship happening there. When I look at the Indian culture, there's a heavy underpinning of entrepreneurship there as well. However, when you look at the majority of the population of the island, we have a large set of them working in the civil service. And as the referee said, during Onalfa's time, there was a restructuring period when jobs were lost. And now we are back into a restructuring period again where jobs will potentially be lost. However, the other two communities that I just observed tend to have more resilience as it relates to restructuring the job markets in Barbados. So could you give me any type of understanding there? Because
Mm-hmm.
you raised the point about cultures, so I just wanted some understanding of the difference of
Right.
cultures.
Yeah. But you see, but you maybe ask and answer, because you can answer your question yourself. Because the truth is, um, when they speak to culture, or when the model talks about culture, we're addressing all those issues. And I use my experience to maybe begin to address the question. So as a young person growing up, my father was an entrepreneur, and that's what this what he was introduced to. Here is a man having his own business, maintaining his family from his own business. But as I, became of age and all that, he wanted me to become a teacher. So he did not have an appreciation for the fact that I could maybe even have an interest in what he's doing. I'm already predisposed to it to some extent because I'm in a household where this is prevalent, where this is happening. I'm seeing him. I'm driving around in the car. As he go out to meet his customers, as he go to play his trade and all that. So why couldn't this be a natural transition for me? No, in his mind, you want maybe a more secure environment, so you train your children to go and work for someone. And that, unfortunately, I think is what we have been socialized to believe is the better model for us. And so our people, we tend to, send our children to school, send our children to university, and the um, ideal outcome for us as parents is that then they go and they work for someone, and usually that someone is government first. And then if you can, find a government job, then maybe, private sector is your next best. But the point is that you are educated and you're trained to go and work for someone. Remember that your education doesn't begin in the school, your education begins in the home. So when we speak about culture, it is integral, I think, for us to have an appreciation for what our overall ideology is, what our beliefs system is, what we hold to from a values perspective, how we see our children developing, what we ideally want for them, our understanding of what their development should look like, etc., etc. So this is a part, unfortunately, so of what has been our reality. Now, we can spend a lot of time going back to what our experience has been, coming out of a past of slavery. We can talk about that. I mean, I'm sure the research that has been done by persons like Hilary Beckles and Dr. Henderson Carter. Then you talk to Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter has a wealth of knowledge. You look at the books that he's written, Black Business in Barbados, and you see the history of, if I can use the term, Black business in this country. And oftentimes, it is a situation where our people prefer to have our children, the next generation and others, go and work for someone else. Just last year, we had the privilege of listening to Dr. Carter share of so many businesses that had to fold because there was no second or third generation to continue, which goes to the culture of our people. So yes, I mean, that is a reality. But if you may though, Kimar, I want to get the 6 points out and then let's have a discussion on them, if you don't mind. So culture is the third one, right? Support. So let's get the only 3 more to go because I want the audience to see what are the 6 areas that the research says must work hand in hand to develop the pro-business environment that we want, right? There are these 6 things, and you see that they're circles because they're working hand in hand. There's a circular outcome. The support. So we have a vibrant support system in the sense of business support organizations. Yes, somebody may suggest that we tend to operate in silos at times, but the truth is we do have a number of business support organizations and other supports that have been introduced along the way that can provide information, that provides training, that provides business advisory support, etc., etc. So we do have some agencies that fit that bill. If you look at the fifth one of the human capital, which again goes hand in hand to some extent with culture, because the human capital here speaks to the access to persons in the labor market. How, what are we training persons to do? If you look at our tertiary institutions, for that matter, um, I still believe that there's some work there to be done. I mean, I leave it to the professors and so on at the university, those at the community college and all that. But there's clearly a need to maybe reform our educational product, because in a small country like ours, do we really need to be training so many persons to be lawyers at the end of an academic year? Right? Is our training conducive to business activity? Are we training persons in the area of business? Even from school, I see that yes, we have now the financial literacy program being introduced at the level of our primary and secondary school, which is a good effort. But obviously, we need to do a lot more. We have to do a lot more with the training product. We, as it is now, don't really train our young people to think entrepreneurially from early. All right. The thing is that uh, Britain has moved on, the United Kingdom has moved on, and we still have a lot of the UK educational model here in Barbados, where they have moved on in so many areas in their educational product, right? And this is a challenge I think that we have to address. And if you talk sometimes to entrepreneurs, business owners, they'll tell you, but it is a hell of a time sometimes finding staff that are competent in a particular area, that are well trained in a particular area. This was one of the challenges that the manufacturing sector, for example, suffered some time ago, not being able to find suitable skills for those areas of business, for those firms in the manufacturing sector. So are we focusing enough on the human capital and training persons from early to be entrepreneurial in their thinking? And this is my differentiation, Kimar, not to necessarily become entrepreneurs, but to be entrepreneurial, which means we're training persons to think critically. We're training persons to take risks. How many times we've heard, how risk averse we are as a people, we're conservative, etc., etc. The truth is, conservatism and being entrepreneurial are diametrically opposed. Okay, you must be prepared to take risks, must be prepared to embrace failure. That is a no-no for so many of us. If you fail, it's like, that's the end of it. Cast you down to hell. That is it for you. So our human capital must be trained to be innovators, opportunity seekers, risk takers, analytical thinkers. This is the kind of behavior that we need really now to be inculcating in our young people. And the sixth area, the last one, is markets, access to markets. Now, you can't say that you have an entrepreneurial ecosystem or a pro-business culture and you can't find markets. Okay? You're not incentivized to pursue new markets. And we have all kind of evidence here in Barbados. So I think the conversation, maybe the discussion now can commence, Kimar, if you will, now that I've given the 6 points. And I'll start off by saying, if you talk about markets, just recently we had all the conversation about, let's say, those in the construction sector accessing government as a market, because again, remember, the CSME was established to be a market for business activity, right? The single market, single economy. Again, when Arthur and then the others, really sought to put the framework in place for the CSME, it was touted as an opportunity for our micro, small, and medium enterprises to access new markets, to grow their markets. And you have to do that beyond the 260, 50, 75,000 as it was at the time here in Barbados. Government is a market as well, for firms, and therefore government, through its procurement regime, must be able to provide opportunity for firms to access, their um, goods and services, and the procurement of their goods and services for their business. The truth is, those who study the history knows that coming out of the period of emancipation, a number of what we consider to be big businesses now, when their predecessors got the opportunity through government procurement to develop their businesses. They were able to access government procurement to grow their businesses. And so, since within small countries like ours, government is the major procurer, if you will, of goods and services, it represents an opportunity for firms to participate in the share of products being procured by government. And so, wearing another hat, you'll see the lobbying for percentage of government procurement being set aside for certain vulnerable groups. I think, if my memory serves me right, remember I said I've been in this position for a little while. It was a prior administration, if my memory serves me right, actually it was a David Thompson administration that had put in their manifesto, and then it became a policy of the government, to set aside 40% of government procurement for micro, small, and medium enterprises. Now, truth be told, it took a while before this was operationalized. But in the latter part of that administration, efforts were started to operationalize this and to have the procurement regime to support this. But the concept of it is what I'm talking about. At least you appreciated that because government is a major procurer of goods and services. You understood and appreciated. You must, as a democratic socialist country, play an interventionist role in the market and provide a percentage of your procurement to this particular sector, if it is that you're going to help the sector to grow, because that's what it's about. It is helping the sector to build the muscles, right? To build the capacity that the sector can grow. And kid you not, Akimar, kid you not, when you hear this conversation happening, going on at the national level, this is how a lot of our so-called large companies now got off the ground. They got off the ground and they started as a result of procurement from government. Government services, goods, etc. They were able to build capacity in their businesses. So I am a strong advocate. I tell you, I'm a strong advocate for this kind of regime to be in place for the vulnerable groups as well, Because the same way that a number of our big businesses today got big because of their access to government procurement, I'm saying that if you do it for the vulnerable groups, the small firms, the women, the youth, the differently able, that they too can have the opportunity to build capacity and to grow. Why? The largest procurer of goods and services in a country, especially our small countries, our small island states, is government. Okay, so the last point there is markets, and that shows you these 6 areas in this framework working together can help determine if we have a strong business culture, strong business environment. So, having put that framework there for you and for your audience, right? The question then is, are we pro business? Can you say, in all honesty, looking at this Babson College model, is Barbados pro business? Looking at these 6 elements: a policy framework, access to finance, a culture that is conducive to business, business supports, the human capital that's well trained, educated in business, and access to markets. When you put these 6 aspects, these 6 elements together, is Barbados pro business? And no, no, I'm not talking about pro small or pro big. I'm talking about business, period. Is our country pro business? And if not, then looking at this model, here is a theoretical framework that we can work on to get us there. And so my final comment before we commence the discussion, the question equally is asked, well, who drives it? If this is the theoretical framework, who drives it? My view, Kimar, is with our small economy, our small island state, our democratic socialist ideology, government is the best player in our economy to drive this. So what my vision is. Someone shared with me that they believe in a Nordic governance model. I can see a model where if government is serious about having a business culture, an entrepreneurial ecosystem, that you then set up and structure your ministries to suit, and you have an overarching focus on business, and then a number of maybe secondary areas or subdivisions, if you will, that supports that overall philosophy and that overall vision of trying to create an entrepreneurial and business economy. I say to you that given all that is happening, I can see no other solution for us in the future but trying to channel our economy in the direction of becoming an entrepreneurial economy. It is entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial activity across a myriad of sectors that will drive economic growth for us. So it means the powers that be maybe looking at a new development model for us as a small economy. So I'll pause there. Said a lot, Kimar. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a discussion.
Well. I Your numbers are going up quite high. We are at 190 persons so far. So I trust that the word is getting around. That Minnesota has to show very interesting, showing some very keen, studied, analytical perspectives on the business culture in Barbados. I learned quite a few things that I really, well, not to say I didn't know, but I didn't understand to the
Right.
depth that you gave that information. So thank you very much for that. I just wanted to re-acknowledge those persons here in the comments. When we first started, we didn't have so many persons on.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to re-engage here and just to say good night. You have some fans here in the comments. Uh, Square 4 is saying that you are talking with a passion, man.
I see. I see the acronym is using here.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, I
Have,
scream for. Thank you very much. But I'm passionate. First of all, I'm a passionate personality. Those who know me, and I'm passionate about this because the truth is, the survival of Barbados now in the future, and even by extension, maybe the region, requires a paradigm shift in how we go about development. That model that we use coming off of independence is no longer relevant. I tell you the truth, and that's why I said it at the beginning. I somehow feel that former Prime Minister Arthur maybe had a glimpse of it, and maybe started the process. I Truth be told, I'm a little disappointed, really, in where we are now in 2024. But we have to revisit this because if we don't, what do we have to bequeath to the next generation and the next and the next? Okay, an entrepreneurial economy must be the solution for us going forward, right? And so we have to engage our academics, right? We have to engage our policymakers. We have to engage our practitioners, those who are administrative. We have to engage them now at this model. There was an annual activity that Prime Minister Arthur had that I really liked. It was the national um, consultation on the economy. After a while, some person would say, but it got to a point where there were no KPIs, but there were no key performance indicators to come back and discuss it next time and so on. But how things, life is, you must be constantly tweaking and adjusting and so on. But there was a national conversation on the economy where all stakeholders came together to discuss where are we now, Barbados? Where are we now in this year? Where do we want to go in the next, and so on? And what do we need to do? So something like that must be happening. Maybe not annually, you may say, maybe be 2 years, but we must be having this conversation around what do we see for ourselves, for our children. I remember going to Singapore years and years and years ago. Anyway, I talked about Singapore, so I don't want to sound too cliche on it. But to hear leaders speak to a development model 50 years down the road, I mean, it was really motivational. It was really stimulating. And then to think, okay, what is ours? What is ours? And here my economist friend, they quoted earlier saying that, our Caribbean states may be good for business persons, but not good for business. What that says is that there's some business persons who appear to be benefiting, right, from you know what is happening within the economy. They get contracts. They are the ones constantly singled out for business opportunities and so on. But there's no broad strategy. We need a strategy for development that embraces all. We got to be carrying along everybody with us. And if you're going to talk about business, then look at those 6 points. You asked me about the trust fund earlier, which is a part of the financing bit, and that was a good initiative to be able to introduce a product that you can access a 5,000 or 10,000 without having to worry about collateralization at the time, and so on. But as we all know, that is really just an introduction. Where do you go from there? Then you must have the other layers and so on that you can consider. And even the trust fund suffers from um, demand not being able to cater to supply. And Kima, how we feel about access to financing. I mean, I've been studying Jamaica. I remember reading a global entrepreneurship monitor report some years ago that suggested that Jamaica was the most entrepreneurial country in the region, right? And they tick a lot of the boxes that I talked about earlier, down to having a very vibrant junior stock exchange of late, which addresses that equity um, financing bit that I talked about earlier. So, it is being able to take along everyone. If you have a business idea, you keep my stress and you have a business idea. I think Michael Porter and his competitive advantage and looking at the five forces model talk about how easy it is to enter the market with that idea. It is hell sometimes for people to enter the market with a business idea because of a number of reasons, a myriad of reasons. You can't access financing. Sometimes you don't know where to go for the information. Yes, there's some of us in business support organizations that have been trying to close that gap, right? But it is not as easy. Don't kid yourself. It is not as easy as it should be to enter the market and to sustain a business. To fail too. We don't have a culture of failure. Oh my goodness, we don't have a culture of failure. And we pick up our various books. We Google and we hear the stories in the industrialized economies where persons who fail are actually rewarded. Why? Because they've had the experience of trial, they've had the experience of failure and so on. And someone said to me some time ago, but do you know, they asked me if I use, what is that thing, that spray that you use to unhinge things. If you have a hinge that's keeping a lot of noise and so on, you go for that spray,
WD-40?
WD-40. And someone
Yeah.
asked me, do I know why it's called WD-40? I said no, I've never really studied it. It's because they said because it took 40 efforts, 40 tries in order to get this thing to work. That's why
I
it's called
the kernel
WD-40.
KFC made chicken so many times, and the kernel failed and failed and failed and failed time after time to the perfected what we know how as KFC chicken.
Correct. So that goes to the culture that I'm talking about. If you go, you sit before a loans officer in any of our financial institutions, and you tell them, oh, you can't speak with pride. Oh, but I tried this thing, and I failed a couple of times. They're like, huh? You're not a good risk. So immediately you're written off as being a bad risk because of your experiences. So we don't have a culture of embracing and appreciating failure and being able to turn that into a learning experience. So when you think about these 6 areas, Kimar, the question then is, what do we need to do as a country to get our economy on those cylinders, operating on those cylinders of being more entrepreneurial? Because this is what they did. These are academics that did this work. And I'm not an academic, I consider myself a quasi now because of the much research and so on that I have been doing. But here you have a model. And I think, it is incumbent on us to have an appreciation that the development path for Barbados, it has a change. It is not, in my view, on the right trajectory in terms of entrepreneurial development, entrepreneurial activity, and an entrepreneurial ecosystem to be able to produce that type of entrepreneurial economy that we need to see. You go and listen to the calling programs and read the stuff and so on. And you'll hear the issues.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Our neighborhood dog is back with us again this evening. Usually tunes in to say hello, but we have
That's good. I love animals, so that's fine.
yeah. So we have some more persons tuning on. We're at about 238 persons tonight. So the numbers are growing. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to Alternate Views. We had some very interesting persons tuning on so far. So I just wanted to acknowledge them, and then you have a whole host of questions that's flying in. So we want to ask you to indulge with the audience for a bit. However, at first, just let me acknowledge some persons here. We have the Bayesian traveler saying good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Beijing traveler. I can see, yeah, I can see the image there.
We have Hasbra saying this is very educational. Hurricane Writer saying small business
Hasbro.
vital to Barbados. You have to be. doggedly determined to make your small business succeed.
Oh, you're so true, Hurricane Raider. You have to be determined. I tell you,
And you have
this is why I salute all those who have been in business for a while, because the truth is sometimes they succeed really despite of the blocks and the environment and so on. I mean, forgive me, Kimar, but I must I can't, every time I have a public forum, I have to single out people like John Watson and Mohammed Nasser. These are the guys who went before Dennis Tull and the late Trevor Job Clark. These are persons who laid the foundation for actually people like me to come after and be an administrator in the sector, and many of them are still prodding along. Sandra Hooper, many of them are still there prodding along in the area of business that they started. And they can share tons and tons of stories with you. But I recommend the book by Dr. Henderson Carter, Black Business in Barbados. Again, another eye opener, and even a conversation with him around the development of black business in this country. And yes, he wrote a lot about black business. And I know you asked earlier about the difference with other ethnic groups. And the truth is, they have some models. Like I've seen um, a model amongst the Indian community, that the closest that we have come to it, the closest, it's not the exact, because we don't have the regulatory framework, but the closest that we've come to it is the credit union movement, our financial cooperative. That's the closest that we've come to the model that they have, the closest. So we had a conversation some time ago about banking, and the Islamic banking model was discussed. Granted, we don't have the regulatory regime for it, but you can learn a lot from it by looking at what
right.
obtains, for example, in that group, in that ethnic
Islamic,
grouping.
Islamic finance is simply lending without interest. You
Eh,
hear me?
yes, I heard you. In
Right. I was
summary, but where is the capital come from? Look at who's putting up the capital. Look at how they capitalize each other and capitalize the business ideas that they have within their community.
yeah. Um. Right. I'm gonna let's hold that thought. Let me. I want to finish acknowledging your supporters here in the crowd. uh, this show is nothing without the audience. Like I said,
True.
they're coming on in the numbers to hear what you're having to say here this evening. Calvin McKenzie, Sean Cool, Mervyn Marius, Judith Ann Clark. You have Travis Seeley, the Beijing Eagle. Dr. Ferdinand Nichols, Esther Blue. You have David Boeing, William Giddings, Aisha Harding, and Deborah Law, Leo Fire, John Seeley, Pete Way, Tyrone Nurse. But you have some. I'm going to ask my questions after, but I rather you engage the audience here and then to see what they're asking. We had some very interesting questions up front earlier, so I'm trying to trail them back that you can have your time to answer the questions. Michelle Bailey was asking one question for Dr. Holder. Why so much red tape for small businesses to join the Small Business Association, especially with the lowering of tax rates? Only entities registered will be taxed at 5.5 versus 9%. You care to?
Yeah, I'm sure. Was it MIMAT 2017?
Okay.
I'm sure that with all the discussion and conversation around this new regime, there's some misunderstanding, because the truth is, accessing the 5.5% has nothing to do with, if I can use the acronym she has there, SBA. Has nothing to do with SBA. So joining that organization, I can speak to with a degree of authority, is simply filling in a form and sending it in. That's it. Pay your $50. I don't want to do any advertising on your show, but pay your $50 and that's it.
Okay, go ahead.
So I don't know of any other requirement, fill your form in, pay your $50. But the truth is that following this announcement, um, and how it was done, there was, and I think there still continues to be some misunderstanding within the community around this particular regime. The same organization, ironically enough, had a webinar just last month. Kimar is trending on that organization's YouTube channel that persons can go and watch. um, about this, but the two are not necessarily the same. The access to the 5.5%, and I think she means really approved small business status, because that's what it is. The 5.5% that was announced referred to those who are registered according to the Small Business Act. So I'm not so sure if that SBA means Small Business Act and not the association, because it's not the latter, it is the former. Now, permit me, Kiman, let me preface by saying it is my understanding that this matter is being reviewed. That's my understanding, that this matter is being reviewed. For the simple reason, I'm not so sure when Mima joined the conversation, but we're sharing at the beginning about the Small Business Act, which was introduced back in 1999 and amended 2006. The Small Business Act spoke to something called an approved small business, because the architects at the time wanted to carve out a unique space for the most vulnerable in the sector. By, they'll pay a lower tax rate, they'll access duty-free concessions, etc., etc. But the truth is, it has not been an easy journey for persons to access this status called approved small business status. To this day, they sit here. What's the day's day? Not the day before International Women's Day, the 7th of March. There are not 200 approved small businesses in Barbados, according to that act. And so when it was announced that those who are registered according to the act will benefit from the 5.5%, I maybe was one of the first in the press and engaging with policymakers to rethink this policy statement, rethink this regime. Because as it is currently constructed and as it is and was announced, it won't do what the intention was. Because the intention is, I would think, to be able to have a special tax rate of 5.5% for those that are small business companies. So you want a company, as long as a company operating in Barbados is defined as small pursuant to the act, you want that they can benefit from this lower tax rate. And that is an ideal position. We commend that. That is a motivation, that is an incentive for the small business sector. But that was not how the policy was drafted. The policy said approve small business. Okay? And so, wearing that other hat, my position was, let's revisit this, because as it is currently constructed, what is your intention, which is that small businesses can benefit from this, won't happen. So, Mima, the work now must be done, in my view, to revisit this. Now, yes, according to BIA, BIA has to follow the policy that was given. Register small business companies, meaning approve small businesses pursuant to the act. So that is what the policy says. But I believe that there is work ongoing to revisit this so that it is not just approved small businesses. Because if it was approved small businesses according to the act, less than 200 businesses would benefit from this, right? And what is desirable is that all small businesses, small companies that, make a profit, the taxable income can be taxed at the 5.5%. That is an ideal position. That is an incentive for the sector. That is welcome, I'm sure, by all. So I think that it is going to be reviewed. And as a matter of fact, I think that it is being reviewed based on the information that I receive of late. But I'll share with you that in another week or two, Kim, I'm trying not to advertise on your show, but very shortly, the next webinar for that organization, there will be someone there from the BRA to discuss this matter even more fulsomely.
Yeah, well, we fully support it. Anything to help Barbados work better, we definitely. So don't say advertising. The more you get the message out there, the more successful the projects that you work on could become. I am sure there are persons listening on here who would want to reach out after, get additional information, be involved. So go right ahead. We have
Okay.
a comment from someone here who seems.
Cheryl Holder. I'm not so
Yeah,
sure if this Cheryl is family to me. About we holders are related. we come from the north, St. Peter, St. Joseph. So Cheryl, not so sure if you're in that category, but if you are, Godspeed to you. Politics. She's making a comment here about politics. Kimar, I didn't mention politics in my 5 areas earlier, but politics will come.
yeah,
Politics will come. We have an opportunity to discuss some politics a little later down the road. We have
yeah.
enough time. Politics will come.
It's true. It's true. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I just hear someone, Cheryl, encouraging you um, to keep walking the tightrope that you're walking. But we have some additional questions here. Um, so I want to take one or two. Uh, we have Calvin McKenzie saying here that access to capital is the major failure of black business. What is the remedy?
But not just access to capital, Calvin. I pay attention to Calvin's comments in another place, another show that I watch every now and again. I see Calvin is very active in his commentary. Calvin, I agree that access to capital is a part of the plank, but it's not the only one. You gotta have those 6 areas working together. Because if you give a black business capital but you got no markets, you're still in trouble. So you still gotta find markets for the goods and services. All right. If you give a black business capital, but the policy framework is restrictive, I'm very concerned, even as I sit here, with what I call the cost of compliance. Yes, I understand that, and we all agree as Barbadians that we have to work hand in hand with any government, for that matter, to make sure that Barbados complies with international dictates. You don't want to be blacklisted, grey listed, etc., etc. But sometimes, in an effort to comply, you have these arduous rules, these very harsh rules that you expect small black businesses to adhere to comply. Sometimes, by the snap of a finger, it doesn't happen like that. And so we have to be careful that in our efforts to comply, we are not making it extremely hard and difficult for businesses to exist. Case in point, let me give you an example. We had this and again, I have to say it, another hat. You go to open a bank account. This actual fact. You go to open an account, and the bank's rules suggest that you must have certain things in place that you obviously can't have in place until you have the account open, right? But when you drill down, that is because of AML, KYC, sorry, anti-money laundering, know your customer policies, and so on, that you have to put in place as a financial institution. Now, yes, you have to adhere to those rules, They're being set by the international agencies. But in order for the business to have a record, start operations, they need that account. They need that account so that they can receive monies, they can pay, they can, write checks to vendors, etc. They can begin to keep a record and so on. But yet you make it extremely difficult for those same businesses to even open an account. So this is what I'm saying, that the policy and the regulatory regime must be enabling. Because if it's not enabling, then it's going to be difficult for the said business to even start in the first place. So you give them all the capital in the world, and all of these other issues are not in place, you're still going to have problems, right? If you can't find staff, competent staff, well-trained staff, again, another issue, right? So I'm saying that yes, capital is critical. I agree. It is a critical aspect of it, but it is not the only one. Capital must work hand in hand with other areas. I'm very concerned, for example, Kimar, about the CSME. Now the heads of government met, as you know, here recently in Guyana, and
You have a
you
question here on CSM?
gave gave the commitment to the free movement of people by the end of March, I think it is. And I mean, I look forward to seeing how the countries are going to respond. Already, we have one country sending out a memo saying, "Oh, wait a minute, hold a second, we ain't so sure we're ready yet." But nonetheless, the fact is, what was the purpose of the CSME? What was the purpose of the single market? I remember there was a plan that we would have moved from the single market to the single economy. I think one deadline mentioned some time ago was 2015. We are in 2024, right? Is this thing really going to become a reality? We saw a little light here recently that maybe it will, but that is an opportunity for an expansion of markets. The truth is, you need to find market for those that are able now to expand. Not all firms will expand. Let's appreciate that, because you don't and you don't have to necessarily um, uh, build your business locally before you expand. Some companies can actually leapfrog the domestic market into the export market. So we know that is possible. But the point is, you got to be able to expand. You got to be able to find opportunities for companies to expand. And then we all know Barbados has a trade surplus with only one region in the world, and that's the OECS sub-region. We have a trade plus only with that region, but I believe we still do. And so the CSME was intended to give us an expanded market for our goods and services, right? So whereas I agree, Calvin, I want to suggest to us that capital is critical, and different types of capital too, right? Not just loans. We need to get our junior stock exchange going here in Barbados, and crowdfunding and other types of capital. But the other aspects that I mentioned in this theoretical framework are equally important. That's my humble hypothesis, if you will.
Yes, but I want to ask a question. No, I always wondered. I observed Shafet, the behavior of Shafet. Shafet is a local successful company. I believe you say a big business, but no, it didn't start as a big business. It grew from a small, medium, and it came up through the years. However, um, Shafet in the diaspora, the only movie we've seen, we saw it recently where we had, I think it was the BTMI, sponsoring Shafet to go into the US and setting up, what you call it, I call it a sample house, and to do some marketing as it. But I often wondered, we had Massey expanding into Barbados and Sumacal expanding into Barbados, and we saw even Republic Bank expanding into Barbados, and we saw a large Trinidadian investment happening. Um, how come Barbados and a company like Shafet and you say, for example, the Williams Industries do not I only see it with Goddard Enterprises, who has operations over in I think it's Colombia.
You're going to Latin America, correct?
Yeah. So how come more Barbadian companies, and they're using Shafet as the example, do not do that type of investing?
The simple answer from me, Kimar, is that it's clearly not a part of their business model. You know, it seemed not to be their business model. I mean, that is a case study. I am sure, maybe even discuss in management classes at UE and other places. You know, why is it that they've never been incentivized, even encouraged to consider an export strategy? Um, I don't know. I can only assume that it is not a part of their business model at this time. That's the only assumption that I can take. The reality is, there's no government that can force a private business to leave these shores. You know, and I would hate to think that you would put a policy regime in place to do so. You can't do that.
Well,
You
not
know,
force, but encourage.
but
Give me the encouragement to.
yeah, it is not their business model. The only thing that, because at the end of the day, it goes to the business model. Their business model, if you look, is to saturate the local market. How many branches they have now? What, 70?
God knows, they think they have more branches than parishes in Barbados.
Well, yeah, they have. Because we only have 11 parishes. They have, I think, either 16 or 17, maybe. But that is not their business model. I mean, I can offer a personal opinion. That I would love to see that. Yes, we have more brands that can go into the export market. I mean, it helps with the earning of foreign exchange, which is a key objective and goal, I believe, for any economy. And so it begs the question, maybe what then should we look at in terms of policy incentives to encourage companies, to expand and to internationalize
In need
the
for
business.
in need for
Yeah, 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 yeah. Agreed. You need to earn. Yeah, either can earn or foreign exchange or save on foreign exchange,
yeah.
right? And I ain't sure how much they're saving, but you gotta earn foreign exchange or save on foreign exchange.
Well,
So
earn, save, or borrow. That's the problem we have. There's
but
not.
I can leave you or the economists to deal to deal with that aspect. I want to see a vibrant business environment, an environment that encourages persons who have a business idea, who have a skill, and who want to commercialize, monetize that skill, that talent that they have, that they can do so with ease, because we have an environment that is enabling to business. When that begins to happen, trust me, we're going to see improvements. We're going to see improvement in our quality of life. We're going to see the enfranchisement of the vulnerable. We're going to see employment generation. I say the folks like that. You talk about Massey. Yes, you talk about some of the bigger players, right? I put it to you that 5,000. No, let me say 5,000. 1,000 small or medium enterprises, right, can easily hire two persons. 1,000 small and medium enterprises can easily hire two persons, right? Before any of those large companies hire 2,000 individuals. So I mean, a good way to soak up your unemployment in a country is to have a vibrant business sector, especially a vibrant small business sector, right? Because it will help you to soak up the unemployment in the country. And mind you, there's actually there's studies done that shows as well, um, vibrant entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial activity has a positive correlation on a reduction in crime. I think I heard someone in the public space making the point some time ago that you're having the issue with the social disruption and social unrest and criminal activity, and so because we have a lot of people that cannot find economic opportunity. So when they can't find economic opportunity, they resort to criminal activity, right? So to me, I don't know. It is such a common sense issue to have a development model built around entrepreneurship and creating an entrepreneurial economy, because it has social implications as well, right? Not just economic, not just the numbers, but it has social implications as well.
Yes, well, I support those ideologies. I actually pursued an entrepreneurship course at KFL called Student Entrepreneurship and Empowerment and Development, called the SEED program. Uh,
Ayana, yes. No, no, it's seed program. Well,
Ayana,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that was a very excellent program, I must say.
Yeah, of course.
Um, in the classroom setting, but as opposed to sitting in a class doing the traditional set, every lecture every week was a different component to constructing a business plan that you had to submit at the end of the program, and then you would enter into the competition where you would be paid, if you're the winner, of course, $10,000 in startup capital from First Caribbean Bank. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
watched, not in depth though, but I saw programs like Shark Tank and other programs where you would come and encourage entrepreneurs to bring business ideas and to do competition for startup capital. Now, I find that in Barbados, um, we would do a talent show, or we would do anything other than
Mm-hmm.
put aside money uh,
Right.
for a competition like a Shark Tank, or even like the CMC program, and bring it in schools. Not only schools, I've also find that, not we're not getting political, no, but I find that even in political parties, their planning must go much broader in terms of a practical implementation of supporting small businesses, right? Uh,
Yeah.
you made a point earlier. I just want to expand on it a bit in terms of the economy is made up of majority small businesses as opposed to uh, large businesses. And I made this point earlier. There are more persons employed in the small business sector than there are employed in the medium and large sectors, right? Well, one or the other may control more capital. We're looking at numbers in terms of headcount, right? So I am supportive of the idea of government policy uh, trending towards supporting small businesses in both the United States and Canada. There are startup programs which invest in small
Mm-hmm.
businesses. I know that United States has a very large small business association as well, and
Mm-hmm. Administration. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and they put up money through what you call burn cycles. So they know that um, 95% of businesses startups do fail, but for that, those five who do succeed, obviously with support, the 5% could be able to generate XYZ employment every year, or however it
Mm-hmm.
is measured.
Yes,
Um,
it's cyclical. Yeah, they come back into the market, huh? They
yes,
come
yes.
back into yes, they come back into the market. But you're
However,
right. You're right. I mean, um, I I might have sung. I guess I sound like a start record by now. But I go back again to Arthur, because not only did we see him start the legislative regime, the after the Barbados Development Bank folded, those new types of financing and so on. But if we go back to my model, the model that I put up earlier, in supports, one of the things that he had introduced then too was this innovative competition concept, which was a national thing. That kind of programming is said. No, the truth is it needs to be expanded, yeah. But you need to have um, those kinds of competitions at a national level that can provide financing for new ideas. Because what that program did is that it challenged young people in particular to come up with new ideas, new concepts. In the US and so on, they'll talk about innovation competitions and the like, right? And many times this is where investors, for example, go to find the next best thing, the next new idea, the next creative concept, the next creative idea, right? And so we kind of had a microcosm of it here. But it is a part of that overall support regime that I'm talking about. I think someone put up there just now. These young minds need to be in government. Kimar, I really want to thank that person for calling me a young mind. It's referring to me. I really thank you for calling me a young mind. I feel really good now on the eve of International Women's Day because it's telling me that body can't see the grays at the top of my head. But I thank you for calling me a young mind on the eve of International Women's Day. I tell you that really made my night. You
Compliments.
know, you see. But you're right. We need to have a mechanism where we can bring together key players. I really want to see again that national consultation on the economy or some you know some form of that you have a way of soliciting the views from stakeholders. You got to have a way of getting stakeholders to be involved in the national conversation on the development of their country. Right? We don't do those kinds of things now. But I think it's important. And that was a good model actually that existed back then. And if it is you're gonna have, for example, a strategic plan for your country, then you want input from key stakeholders across the country on that plan, and a mechanism that you can come and you can share with, are we meeting the maps, are we meeting the KPIs that we've set for a particular period? If not, why not? What do we need to do? How do we tweak, etc., etc.? But I fear that conversation is not happening at the national level. So you have a whole set of people, some might say generations, people that are not involved really in the development conversation about their country. I don't know, but I mean, I guess that's a different topic. Kimar, you might say that's a different topic, but I think that we need to have that. We need to revisit that.
Yeah, maybe. We have.
Pedro. Small economies like ours, in my view, cannot adopt a capitalist ideology, right? We can't adopt a capitalist ideology. We must have, I hold, we must stick to our democratic socialist ideology, right? Where government um, takes care of, plays a critical role in providing for the vulnerable in our society. Pedro, I watch your comments in other places, and I usually agree with you, but not on this one. All you have to do is look to the north, and you see that capitalist regime and what that has done to minority groups, in particular vulnerable groups. We can't afford that in the Caribbean, really. So government must continue to play that interventionist role. And I would even advocate that government leads the charge. Government, to me, is the best player in the economy to lead the development charge of helping to make our economy an entrepreneurial economy. and helping to create a pro business environment for the present and the future. And as I said at the very beginning of my discourse today, um, that we are 2 years, 3 years as a republic. And if there was ever a time that, we should be having this conversation, no, because what do we see as a republic in 20 years, 30 years? Marvin, you're correct. ONASA did have that award for innovation. That innovation competition was an annual thing, right? And that was a part of the supports that I'm talking about based on the theoretical framework I presented earlier, right? So here we are as a young republic, and we want to, we want to, in my view, have a good grasp on where do we see this republic going. What kind of country do we want in 25 years, 50 years from now? So here's an opportune time. Kima, you have a role to play in the process, no? I mean, when you get again, you know that you have a significant role to play. I think maybe the comment earlier about the young mind might be referring to you. And what so that me, when you have a significant role to play
And
in
the
this
young,
process.
we need both the young and the young at heart. I can't do without experienced persons with the knowledge, and I guess the young at heart could use some enthusiasm, some vibrancy, some new trains of thought, some new information that can help to refine these strategies. I don't think the problem fundamentally changes over time. I am sure from listening to you, some of the problems you are discussing should have been tackled since way back way. When Mr. Arthur tried to bring policies that can help. Um, so it goes. It's a dual effort in terms of new trends, new ideas, what is happening now. But the base and the fundamentals of the problems never change, because I find that we have a lot of structural issues which impacts on business in Barbados and structural issues which impact on business through the Caribbean. Now, I find that Caribbean cultures, as it relates other Caribbean countries, as it relates to business, are much easier, and that is just from outward perception, not fact or from experience, but outward perception. To even create a company in Barbados, they have to go down to Caipo and they have to register, as opposed to going online in the Bahamas, Cayman Islands, even St. Lucia, and registering a company online in the day, having my receipts and stuff posted directly to my house. Uh,
Mhm.
having
Agree.
banking and these type of services readily available, having access to the foreign exchange to be able to do these type of businesses. Their domains that have low to very or no income
Mhm.
tax at all.
Mhm.
There are quite a few benefits that Barbados do not have as it relates to developing businesses. So I often think that Barbadians believe that we still maintain the traditional goodwill that we had in the world when we first broke away from England, and that sentimental little England, Barbados. We kept that perspective, but in my opinion, that has changed because most of those persons who would have had that goodwill probably died out by now. And we, going to Republic, have to create a new way forward, as the
Mhm.
world has now been opened up to Barbados. We now do business with all types of people. We do business with the Americans, we do business with the Europeans, we do business with the Chinese, we're doing business now with the Arabs, given that our the investment in the Grand Yados International Airport, among other tourism type investments. So we have different cultures emerging, which
Mhm.
has no impacted on our landscape as Barbadians. So we have to kind of change with the cultures or get left behind. And unfortunately, Barbadians will or may become just another worker class. No, not necessarily for Caribbean brothers, but no, on an international level, Where persons require cheaper labor, um, they would check for Barbados if we do not evolve with the times to become more qualified. And when I say qualified, I don't mean you have to go up and Cave Hill to do bachelor's, masters. There are other qualifications out there. There's skill
Mm-hmm.
qualifications out there um,
Yeah.
that you can engage and to become more, I say, increase your monetary value as an individual and look outside of the traditional. I had to go and get CSCs, and then I got to go BCC, and then I got to go UV, and then you join the unemployment line and be underemployed, and then you face
Mm-hmm.
the issue of brain drain. So my thinking is this is the right time to have some innovative thinking, develop an entrepreneurship type economy. And my motivation for that, as I said earlier on the show, was seeing those persons in the severance line and in the unemployment line and looking at the amount of people who were facing job loss
Mm-hmm.
during COVID when we shut down and when we moved services online. I would say Barbadians are not ready for this revolution of going digital,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
fear those persons who would be left behind. And I feel that same way also about business development. And like I say, there are some subcultures in Barbados who practice entrepreneurship at high levels, and they commend them. In fact, I admire them. Um, However, I would encourage Barbadians to take a leaf from their books and try to get more unity in terms of trying to develop um, a more entrepreneurship idea. But I know that um, years and years and years and years of cultures, it doesn't happen overnight, and it will take some work for
Mm-hmm.
persons like yourself and myself and many other persons who are interested in trying to form a new culture that could see a new plan for development that would help with the survival
Mm-hmm.
of the country, and I will stretch as far as to say as to change in the country much for the betterment of it.
And the reality is that we have no choice. We have no choice. I know that you had Professor Robinson on earlier in your broadcast, but I'm not so sure if he had shared then a piece of research that he would have done on a number of economies in the region. But I will say to you, he shared this at a forum I was at a couple of years ago, and it changed my life. That's the truth. A couple of years ago, not that long, but a couple of years ago, and it changed my life. And I realized that there's a degree of urgency that we must now embrace to be able to reverse the slide that we are on. And this quickly, because I mean it is his intellectual property. He shared it, but they would have done that. You apparently a study looking at the cumulative economic growth of countries from 1981 to 2021. Cumulative economic growth of about 15 countries. Um, Several Caribbean, yes, and they threw in, Mauritius, Singapore, Dominican Republic in there for good measure. And if you take a look at this graph, right, cumulative economic growth of these 15 odd countries. I tell you, the thing changed my life. Barbados was at the bottom. So all the bravado and so on that we have, right? Barbados was at the bottom of this table at 22.19% real GDP growth cumulatively over that period. When you had, okay, forget the Singapores of this world, but you had the Dominican Republic cumulatively at 180. You had Belize at 168. You had St. Kitts Nevis at 152. Now, I'm sure some of you listening may say, but you know, are you really comparing apples with apples? Yes, we are. Because what was the more significant bit of information from this table wasn't just that Barbados was at 22.1, which was actually the last on the table, at the bottom of the table. But the research showed that even though it was cumulatively for that period, 1981 to 2021, that the majority of that growth for Barbados actually was in the 1970s, early 1980s. That after about mid 1980s or thereabout, our growth cumulatively was very low. I mean, when I tell you the truth, when he shared this, I think everybody in the room at the point in time when you saw this and you heard the narrative around the data, you had no choice but to have that come to Jesus moment and realize that on current trajectory, if we don't have a paradigm shift, we would really have no significant future to bequeath to the next generation. Right? Now, I'm no economist. So I leave the economic conversation and the economic narrative for you economists. But I will say that common sense tells me that this statistic, this data, is not complementary. And this information says that we have no choice now but to really look at transforming our economy to become an entrepreneurial economy. Let's go back to the Babson College model. If you don't like that, let us look at another theoretical framework then. But one that says we must put all hands on deck now. They say what? Many hands may like work. We must put all hands on deck now to be able to craft a development model for this country that is inclusive, that takes so long, our vulnerable groups in particular. More importantly, that is business oriented, that is pro business. Our system at present is not pro business, right? And this is why, Chester, you get the brain drain, right? I have a niece right now studying in Canada, and the fear is, well, when she's finished, will she really want to return here? And you hear the conversation. Talk to any parent that has a teenage a child, and talk to young people. You know, they want to leave because they're not feeling that there's a future for their own development here. We can change that. We can change that by doing what is required to transform, to begin to transform. Because anything can happen with some of a thing, I agree. But to begin to transform our economy to being an entrepreneurial economy. We got a choice. So I really hope. I'm not so sure if you've seen that graph or heard the narrative around that, Kima, but I can send it to you, and you'll see that you know our cumulative growth over that period, nothing to shout about. But more importantly, it trended in the wrong direction, and that's the issue. It's trending in the wrong direction, but we can pull it back.
Well, in that case, what are the required interventions if it's trending in the wrong direction? The data shows it. We have some infrastructure to tackle it, but what would be the appropriate interventions to reverse the slate?
Well, I tell you, somebody put up there earlier um, a few comments about politics. So I did tell you the political conversations will come. I have a few things to say that I will say as the time comes. But for now, based on that graph, the question is, who is best to lead the charge? I say government. I say government. And if it is that the government of the day agrees, they can start the process. Right? They can start the process. Look at it again. You need the right policy framework. Is the policy framework right now enabling for business? No. No, it is not. Right? So what needs to be done there? A conversation around what do we need to, let us strip it apart. Let us strip it apart. Let us have the consultations and let us begin to come up with a policy regime that will enable business. Financing, we have a few solutions, yes. We have still some way to go. We still got to get the junior market going. We still need to broaden the availability of financing for the sector. Right? I still don't feel that we put enough, of capital available for firms to access. I satisfy that enough. And it is not an emotional thing though. Data shows they need significant resources, right? And you can go down the line. Culture, but it's gonna take a little while to work on culture. Culture is not the snap of a finger, because you know me, what Drucker says, right? That culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? We know that saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you did that when you did your business classes, Kimar, you heard that. It is a fact that culture, will take a little longer period. We understand, but we can start. We can start with our reform of our education system, etc. I've not looked at the proposals there. I have not read them. I'm not getting involved in that conversation. I'll admit. So I'm not even going over there. But there's significant reforms needed at the level of our education, right? Our societies, etc. Business supports, we've not been doing too badly there. We have to work, yes, on the human capital issue. I want to see our tertiary institutions, in particular our community college and other institutions, focusing a lot more on entrepreneurial type training, and preparing our people for that. Our civil service, our public sector, has served us well. Ironically enough, just yesterday I was having a conversation with some folks on the purpose of the public sector coming out of the 18th century, the 19th century, served us well, because the public sector, it was there to make sure you keep your politicians in check, highly bureaucratic, and so on. It had its function. We are in the 21st century environment now, so our public sector has to be transformed to this 21st century reality that we are in. And obviously the market still an issue. We have to incentivize companies to be able to export. We have to get the single market and economy going, right? We have to make sure that government procurement, for example, is more equitably distributed, that the vulnerable can participate. I'm not so sure if you ever took a look at the procurement bill, for example, the procurement regime. It spoke to a percentage of government procurement for vulnerable groups like the youth, differently able, and so on. And then there was supposed to be, through the bonfire platform and so on, a transparent mechanism that you can track and see, who's getting government procurement, because government procurement can't be going to a few big
Right.
businesses. Government procurement has to include smaller businesses, vulnerable groups, etc.
Well,
Right?
that's a very interesting conversation you started. Um, I try my best to stay out the political convos, but no, you've
Well, you're a young budding politician. You can't still keep on. You can still, if you're a political aspirant, you
yeah,
can't stay out of the political conversation.
it's
Might stay out of your alternate view, sure, but you'll have it somewhere else, I'm sure.
Yes, we have it somewhere else. But I mean, this time though, I have to make this comment. Know that you've mentioned the Public Procurement Act. No, before the act was passed, that promise was in a manifesto where specific a specific percentage of government procurement would go to the youth, specific would go to the disabled, and there were different categories. Um, However,
Mhm.
we passed a Public Financial Management Act, which was there to clean up the way how public finances are managed, which I applaud an effort to tackle that area. And included in there was a promise to have all public procurement contracts over $1 million logged in at KIPO. We mentioned the bonfire platform. I have not heard much details of that specifically, but I did go down to Kaipo seeking to find out about the public procurement contracts, and they were not there. And to be honest with you, the staff at Kaipo told me there was no transfer information from the top level to that departmental level that they could have public contracts on file, right? I do support your point of being able to spread the economic pie among players. We saw examples recently where persons came to the public crying out that government procurement was not being spread adequately. We have examples of that. So, what is there to basically uh, was there to encourage the government to do as they say in terms of spreading the pie? Because we've had engagement, we've had legislation, we've had promises, but nothing seemed to have work up until this time as it relates to guaranteeing that small businesses will get the promised portion of the pie.
But there's another category I want to add, and then I'll give a comment. Because you mentioned the youth, you mentioned the vulnerable groups and so on. But there's a category that focuses on those in geographical locations. That's in the act. So that what the architects I gather contemplated is that if you are in St. Philip, if you are small what contractors, if you can do work for the school, cleaning up the school and so on, and you're in St. Philip as a geographical location, you should be able to access the procurement that is designated for that area. So geographically, the intention was that the vendors in specific geographical areas should be able to access procurement opportunities in those areas. So that's another category that I wanted to add to that. Now, yes, the bonfire platform was um, um, recently launched. Admittedly, though, a lot of people maybe don't pay attention to these things. That's the truth. A lot of people don't pay attention to these things, but there has been some education around it. I've heard on radio, public announcements, and so on, encouraging vendors to register. An organization that I represent, we've had a couple of sessions encouraging businesses to register because that is supposed to be a relatively, transparent process. I can't speak to what happened at Kaipo, but you know how government works too. Maybe the information didn't get down there yet. Things tend to grind a little slowly, in government and all. In all honesty, but the intention, yes, is that as this is operational, like, you should be able to in a very transparent way, see who are some of the vendors. I know, for example, in bonfire, when you submit a tender, you can track the progress of your tender, and so on. So I think that maybe there's a bit more education that needs to happen with that, or maybe there is a bit more education that needs to happen with the bonfire platform. But overall, it is intended for that. I actually remember being a part of a IADB funded public procurement program. It was called a modernization of government procurement regime back then. and export to all these things. Transparency of of the issuance of contracts, the accessibility to the regime by the vulnerable, and so on and so forth. But we have when these pieces of legislation are passed and then they become operational, we have to be able to hold government accountable for implementation. And given how things have been, we've not had necessarily the system in place for that. So it is fallen, I guess, on other stakeholders in the economy to remind the ministry, okay, don't forget, we're supposed to be doing this. This is supposed to be happening. This is in the act, etc. So this is where citizens now and citizen involvement is important in the governance of their country, right? But as I said, I just wanted to add that group because a lot of people don't realize that the Procurement Act does speak to carving out for those in geographical areas too. So if there's a contract in St. Lucie at St. Lucie School, and there are vendors in the environs of the St. Lucie School, they should be able to access the opportunities there instead of somebody coming from all of St. Philip to be able to do work on that school in St. Lucie. Forgive me, can't remember the new name of the secondary school in St. Lucie. My apologies.
Darrell Jordan, maybe I think Darrell Jordan School. I believe it's the name that was changed from. Yeah, somebody could let me know if we have. Well, I think
Can't
it's a.
remember. But let's say that the school coming up, new the summer coming, and the school has to undergo some renovations. The Procurement Act says that if there are providers in the environs there, they should be able to access. You should not be bringing people from St. Philip, for example, to work on that school in St. Lucie. When you have vendors in the environs, in those geographical areas that should be able to benefit from it, that was contemplated in the legislation. Right now, how do you make sure that it is happening? This is where you need citizens to be involved and speak to these issues.
Hmm. Well, very, very, very interesting. Yes, it's called
Mm.
in Darrell Jordan. Second.
Yes,
I
right,
want to
right.
support that point you just made about geographical location. Um, that
Mm-hmm.
helps a lot. I know part of the challenge for small business owners is transportation and being able to back and forth between jobs. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of small business operators do still take public transportation, which is a headache in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that would be good. I think there's a lot of sentimental value in having persons work in the communities and where they live and where their children frequent. If I had children, I don't have any. Um,
Mm-hmm. Not
uh,
yet.
yeah,
You
I would.
got to add to the population, remember?
Yeah, yes. I definitely taking whatever incentives there are available to go there and add to the population of Barbados. I like paternity leave, paid paternity leave, the whole works. And I
But
definitely.
in fairness, though, let me give an example of this in operation. As you know, recently there was a vending act. Again, another piece of legislation intended to benefit the business community and the small business community in particular. And that act speaks to vending zones. Right now, I know that the current minister for business, to her credit, this is Senator Lynette Senator Lynette, Senator Lisa Cummins. Um, to her credit, her ministry had responsibility for overseeing the vending um, act and the you know building of the vending zones, the carving out rather the vending zones, etc. Right, and I know that, for example, let's look at the one in Redmond Village. Um, you're going to build kiosks in Redmond Village. you're going to, and I would like to think you're going to use vendors from Redmond Village or close to Redmond Village in the environs of Redmond Village. And to her credit, she understands this. This is, an individual who came from business, so understands this concept. And I know that she's, overseeing a process where vendors from the environs are being engaged in the building out of the vending zone there in Redmond Village. That is what the Procurement Act contemplated, right? So I don't know how many people know it, how many people understand and appreciate it, but that is something that you're sure will help to spread the word now. But that is something that people need to have an appreciation for. So when you see things going on in your community, or activity coming up in your community, the vendors in the community, the services providers, the small business people in the community should have a right to tender and participate in the tender for those projects.
I definitely agree with you. We are at 252 persons. We are up at 280 some at one point. So the conversation has definitely taken root, and the comments are flying in. Uh,
I know you have only another 7 minutes, so you understand based on the time to go.
yeah,
So we can get in one or two more.
yes. But you
That'll be
wanted to.
great.
You started by saying that you wanted to touch a bit on the estimates of what were happening at the national level. So if you want to take the time to make whatever comments there, you're very much welcome to do so. Uh,
But I said that it is fortuitous that we were having the conversation at this time when the estimate process is going on. I was hoping that we'll get to hear from the Ministry of Business Development, so that the public can, maybe get to hear what are some of the plans for the new fiscal year, in the area of business, right? And see how we're trending in terms of this pro business culture and pro business economy that we want to carve out, we want to build out. So it was an opportune time, I thought, for this conversation now on minding your business. Um, but you can correct me if I'm right. I don't think that has happened yet.
no, actually,
Right. Okay. Because I think agriculture was the last one
yes.
that was
Um,
being discussed.
I at some point in time would like to have. I don't know, but it should be possible. We actually had a government minister on the program about 2 weeks ago, Minister Humphrey, and so I at some point in time I'd like to have Ms. Cummings, the Minister for Business, on the show as well, that
Mm,
she could come into the space and to give some more girth to what you introduced into the space. We don't know how possible, but nothing beats a try. I would like to hear. Uh, Coming from the wells of the House of Parliament, the Ministry of Energy and Business Development. The allocation for that ministry, as the last I saw, was around $67 million, based
mm,
of expenditures.
mm,
It would be good to hear what initiatives the ministry is planning. What framework we could look forward to. Um, any updates in terms of re-engagement for the business sectors, particularly the smaller sectors? Is there any scope for increases from small to medium, from medium uh, to large? Let's also not forget large businesses as well, because some people tend to think that um, these mega, I call them millionaires, billionaires, people tend to look, especially coming from our society, where we tend to look at the rich and say they should be doing way more for our society. Um,
mm.
we do have some narratives about the wealthy and how they operate, how charitable or not they are. But I wanted to change that conversation a bit and look at
Mm,
what can we also do for large businesses as well to help create more small and medium-sized businesses. Larger businesses do tend to have the capital. Uh,
mm,
However, there's not a silo. I think there was 10 Habitat, which provided a space for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. But I would like to even see the involvement of NGOs, business consultants, particularly the management consultants. I know there's Dr. Norma Shori, who does a lot of work as it relates to management consultants. I know, I think it's Minister Sandra Husbands, who was also a management consultant as well. I think Dr. Kenta Love Carbon, who taught me business strategy and policy at Cave Hill. Uh,
mm.
I'd like to see and hear from these persons. Maybe, we think we don't know, but we love to get them more here to add to your level of conversation, because I saw somebody in the comments saying that the public needs this information,
Yeah,
right?
agreed. And you're calling out some names there and organizations that fit into the support um, component of the framework I mentioned. So we've not been doing too badly with the supports, but I feel that that coordinated mechanism is maybe what is needed. Like, okay, agriculture is being discussed. No, in the Nordic model that someone mentioned to me here recently, the point was made: if we're going to focus on business development, should we not bring all of the productive sectors under that? So even that is an area maybe for conversation in the future. How we structure even the way government works, the way government functions. Because if your focus is pro business, then the truth is you don't want to have 4 and 5 ministries, all over the place that sometimes don't talk to one another. You know how human nature can be. You really want to have a central focus, and maybe if you have units, divisions, and so on, feeding into that, so that you have a, a centralized way from a government perspective, how government is structured to enable business, to treat the business, right? That doesn't happen now. We have different areas dealing with business. So you may have industry over here, you have commerce over there, you have business development over here, and so on. And I began with policy first in my presentation tonight. And that is something that has to be addressed. We need to look at that model and have all aspects of business in one place, right? So that you have better coordination of the services for business and business development, right? Now, it may not serve, you know, uh, political interest, but at the end of the day, we're not interested in that. We're interested in advancing our country and developing our country for the greater good and for the betterment of all. And therefore, you want to adopt a model and put a model in place that will do just that. So that in itself maybe is a conversation that can be had, and maybe even ought to be had, about how we even structure government. Like I go back to um I think it was more about circa 2012 or so. I remember the founding president of an organization that I represent. I remember he was filled with joy when he said, finally we have a ministry that is focused on small business. Because it was the first time that you had a ministry that in its name you had Ministry of Small Business and Rural Development. I think it was called at the time. Something's a correction, something like that. And then from there you had different iterations of it. But I think we need to get back to the point where you have all of the areas in government that are business oriented and focused on business in one place. right? Have one ministry for that, and allow them then if they want to have different units and so on, fine, but feeding into that one ministry. So you have one person at the ministerial level that is responsible overall for facilitating from the legislative and policy perspective business development in the country.
But that's a very interesting perspective. I agree. I don't think we need to have so many divided or diluted efforts, especially at that level. However, I quickly recognize, I guess you should know better than me, having you served in the Senate as well. Um, so you could be able to advise on a seamless system which allows for information, not just information, but ideas, policies, practical implementation, from the top down or from the bottom up as well. Because I find that in Barbados we have uh, silos for information that come from top down, but there's hardly anything to bring it from bottom up.
Mm,
And you have these divergent views as to what is idealistic versus what is actually practical as it relates to the implementation at a ministerial level. So your perspective was definitely fresh and much needed for me, much
mm,
like the audience. Uh,
yeah. It's something to think about for the future, though. I think that the powers that be, if you're really interested, as I said, in creating an entrepreneurial economy and having a pro business culture, then that has to be a component, a feature that is addressed going forward. Any serious country, you must have that ministerial focus on business and all the areas then that in the productive sectors feeding into that, and not
yeah,
not have four and five different silos.
yeah. Well, I want to get your thoughts on one last issue before we wrap up. I know we can't go into much detail on it, but I think it's relevant because of events that we've seen occur, and that is of business and national insurance. Um, I would have said taxation, but that would carry the conversation a little too far and too long. So we're going to deal with national insurance. How do you feel about national insurance for employees? I know we're seeing some new cultures uh, reaching into our country. We've had a concessions bill, which speaks specifically to labor issues, and we're seeing some new and emerging trends happening, labor trends happening within businesses because you can't have a functioning business without the labor component. So, what are your thoughts on the new emerging trends in labor? And fundamentally, how do you feel about national insurance? And then we can wrap up from there.
And emerging trends in labor, you're speaking specifically of the movement, the effort to expand the movement of people through the CSME and so on.
Well, you
Are
can
you talking
since
about
that's your
outside the
but since that's your
CSME?
strong area, but since that's your strong area,
It's a,
CSME.
it's a, it's a pet area of mine. I tell you, I'm
Yeah.
an integrationist. I did a master's in integration studies at UV. One of the best periods I enjoy. Professor Grenard, Dr. Don Marshall, Dr. Christina Hine. We used to have some very robust debates over there at KFL on regional integration.
Mm,
But as long as you address issues of contingent rights, I think that is the addendum to it, huh? Contingent rights, and to make sure that as people move, they can access social services because obviously they're paying into the regime that we have. They're paying their taxes and so on, that they can access social services and other rights that are akin to the free movement regime. That's a conversation that needs to happen. I think we have think so. I think we have within the Prime Minister's office a unit that is set up to address CSME issues. I think so. So I'm not so sure where they're at, but we have responsibility in the quasi cabinet within CARICOM for the CSME, and therefore, I would hope that these conversations. Let me just put it that way. I would hope these conversations are happening within the ministry, that they can feed up to when the heads of government a meeting and so on. But as long as we address that, I can see the CSME taking shape, because I mentioned it earlier. It was intended on really benefiting business, and providing an expanded market for business. But obviously, you have to have the regime in place that can support free movement of goods, services, capital, people. Um, right now, we just have what? Single market. We're struggling with single market part. The single economy don't seem to even to be on the cards. Well, I don't know, but from what you're seeing, you don't get any sense that there's any urgency with that part. But anyhow, the long and short of it, contingent rights, Kimar, and we're hearing that come the end of March, we should have liberalization for across the member states for the free movement of people. So we'll see how that goes. We just obviously got to put the regime in place that persons can pay into the various social systems they have, that in turn they can benefit from the social services in the country. I'm gonna hold my thought on national insurance because I don't want prejudice. Webinar that is to happen soon on that. But I know that there's been a recent change in the amendment to the regime to treat to the self-employed, and yes, we want to encourage self-employed persons to pay in and make their contribution, because there's a benefit. I mean, there's a benefit to be had. We saw that with COVID. Yeah, we saw that with COVID. Those who were not making their contributions obviously weren't able to benefit. And wearing my other hat, our view always was that there were no incentives. There were no incentives, for the self-employed. So as long as we can address the issue of incentivizing them, that they can see the benefits, and we saw that change here recently, where some benefits were introduced through the legislative process for them, and so that's good. We still have not yet addressed what we call the hybrid person. So based on that, the hybrid person is the person who isn't necessarily recognized as self-employed per se, because they may be an employee in the company. They're the only shareholder, yes, but they're an employee in the company. And we call them the hybrid person. So we're still waiting to, you know, have that matter addressed. So I'm gonna hold that one, because it is still out there to be dealt with, because we still, there's still some consternation coming from the sector about that hybrid individual who, as I said, may be the sole shareholder, yes, but they are an employee in the company of 10, of 20, of 25, still within the definition of small business, but they're an employee. So how do you treat to such a person? So I know that there's a conversation going on right now around that, and bringing in more education, and trying to elucidate that on that matter some more. But I gonna put my hand up. I'm a strong advocate for the regional project. I close with saying this. Many people don't know Canada is an integration project. We all know the EU, an integration project. We know what happened to Britain here the other day. Fine. I think a lot of people regret that now. America is an integration project. And I heard someone in the public space made a point some time ago that the Texan and the New Yorkan isn't necessarily, very, the same in terms of their value system, behaviors, etc. But they are American, and they identify as being American. Okay, even though we know different culture and norms, etc., that exist in the state of New York versus the state of Texas. but they are Americans. So the United States is an integration project. So what is taking us so long, 50 years hence, we can't get our integration project further along than where we are now in 2024. We're now hearing that at the end of March, we're going to have free movement of people
Mhm.
beyond the 6 months that you will get if you go to a member state. So we need to answer these questions seriously. Either we are going to put the political will behind making this thing happen, right, or not. But it needs to be dealt with.
Yes. Let's just leave it at that. It has to be done.
Yeah, let's leave it there.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Miss Holder. I had a very brilliant and thought-provoking conversation with you. You raised many issues. You wore many hats tonight, and you
We
were
ain't gonna talk
able.
about the credit union. You gotta come back and deal with that
Yeah, yeah, you're very welcome to come back and deal with that one. That's an area we have to touch on: banking, credit union, vehicles for financing. And we definitely need to look there. I know there have been some changes in terms of how credit unions operate, seeking to bring credit unions onto the international landscape
one.
in terms of our national payment system. And there were some changes. So we should have you back again to discuss that, along with probably some other credit unions who can give us some more uh, fruitful information as to what's happening in this space. So thank you very much on behalf of all of my audience. The comments are flying in. Have Judith Anson. Thank you, Dr. Holder, for a very informative presentation. Zaire Campbell saying thank you. Square 4 contributed quite a bit. Pete Ray, Hurricane Writer. Drop Waldron, we had Dave Weeks contributing earlier, but I'm missing a no. So good night to you, Dave, and good night to Marcia Weeks. Don't forget to tune on to their program tomorrow, 7 p.m. usual time. Um, so yes, we've had Edward Tull tuning in. We had Joseph Cadogan coming on late. Chester Fields was saying that he agrees with the Bahamas position somewhat. It can be a financial burden on social services. Pedro Jammet, and Esther Blue, Tyrone Nurse, and the entire lot. So I'm gonna give you the final word before we go off. So if there's anything that you wish to share, go right ahead.
Well, let me thank you, Kimar, for the invitation to come on the show. Really, really appreciate the conversation tonight. It was a pleasure to talk about the things that I love to talk about. The things that are dear to me, dear to my heart. It's really, really a pleasure. Let me say happy International Women's Day to all the women on the call and those that will watch tomorrow. And I'll conclude by just reinforcing there's an urgency of now. There is an urgency of now. The fact is, um, we've not been growing as we would like. I mentioned briefly that research that was done by Professor Robinson, so it tells me that there's an urgency, and I think that one sure solution that we can explore is seeking to transform our country to becoming an entrepreneurial economy, and a pro business environment that can be inclusive for our peoples to be enfranchised, to improve their quality of life. We know the economic returns, the economic benefits to be had, in employment, earning foreign exchange, and all that. But more importantly, that can really take our people forward to the next level. There's a sense across our nation of lack of optimism, lack of hope. People, you talk to them, people are feeling that there's no future for the next generation to come, and so on. I think we can reverse that. I think we can change that, and we can do so, through a pro business approach. I'm pro business, and I feel that our people have a lot to offer. We have the skills, we have the talents and abilities. We can do it. So we just need the right leadership, that we can get it done. We know that things rise or fall based on leadership. I think it's Maxwell that says that. Everything rises or fall on leadership. So we all need to come together and lead the change that we want to see for our country. It can be done. There's an urgency of now. Thank you very much and good night all.
Yes, so thank you once again for agreeing to come on to the show. Uh, they say it's National Women's Day, but I wouldn't stretch as far as say it was planned. It was not planned. It was just um, coincidence that it worked out this way. But having our first female guest on the show, she set the standard and the bar really high for the females coming on in the future. So you guys have something very high to aspire to. So I will look forward to future shows. I hope that Ms. Holder will not be a stranger to the program and that she will come back on another time, so we could discuss some additional issues and for the audience to engage her and ask her some more questions as well. So thank you guys for your questions. I do enjoy you tuning on every Thursday at 7 p.m. At some point in the day tomorrow, we may upload who will be our guest for next week. We usually upload tonight, but however, we'll be uploading tomorrow, so look out for that. Let's thank Dr. Lynette Holder one more time for coming on and minding your business. I like that title.
Yeah,
Uh,
has been a pleasure.
yes,
God bless you all.
yes, so she really handled
Yeah.
herself well tonight. So thank you
Mhm.
all, viewers, alternate views. We had a very, very good discussion this evening, 7th of March. And we look forward to seeing you next week, right here, same time, same location, alternate views. So have a good night, everyone, and see you next week.
Bye bye.